All right, Dan Diamond writes for Forbes magazine, and his column today, Chris Borland's retirement should terrify the NFL, and here's why. And Dan joins us now. Why should it terrify the NFL, Dan?
Well, first, thanks for having me, Dan.
Uh-huh.
Here's the nuance, I think. So Chris Borland, he's not the first guy who's going to retire early. He's not going to be the last. And I think a lot of coverage is getting some of this wrong. The NFL is still going to have plenty of players who will line up, who will fight tooth and nail to get in the league, to take that spot. For me, it's about how fans are reacting. That's the potential game changer.
Okay, but how are they reacting? And isn't it too early to tell what kind of reaction it's going to be and how that's going to impact the sport?
You know, I'm not sure it's too early. In fact, I think the way that this story has spread across social media is very telling to them. So fans are applauding Borland. You see fans saying, yeah, we get this decision. We understand why more players, millions of dollars on the table. We understand why he's walking away.
But will people turn off the TV, Dan?
You know, and you know this as well as anyone, Dan, I'm not sure that that's going to happen overnight. I think the issue is the steady creep of what we know about the dangers of football. For example, you know, I went looking for people who were mad at Borland, who thought he was making a bad decision. And yeah, I found one or two random fans, but for the most part, and I talked to a couple of 49ers fans, they said, we get this. This is the right decision. We understand that football is a dangerous sport, and at some point, that moral dilemma is going to catch up. I mean, you know what happened to boxing, and that's obviously the closest comparison here. The idea that once there is enough information about the health dangers of the sport, once we know that we're watching people beat their brains up and turn them into hamburger meat, that is not appealing to enough people right now that this conversation is out there. And once enough fans take up and understand why this is not a sport that is good in the long term for its players, for our kids, you really start to wonder about the roots of the game and how long folks are going to be able to support a sport like this one.
But if the NFL was a stock, Dan, how would you treat it?
Well, I think in the short term, it's still a blue chip stock, and that was the point I was trying to make. 5 players retire, 10 players retire like Chris Borland. That is not going to change very much. But I think 5 years, 10 years down the road, that's where really start to wonder about the future of the league, partly because of the concussion issue, partly because, frankly, if there are fewer people getting into the game at the Pee Wee level, if there are fewer players who are willing to stick with the sport for long term, that introduces more volatility into the league. Imagine if you're the 49ers right now. You've seen Patrick Willis retire. You've seen Borland, his replacement, walk out the door. That team, which was already undergoing a horrific offseason, now doesn't know who's going to man the middle of their defense. That is incredible volatility, and at a position where really you're expecting a guy to play years and years and years. That's going to add up too. You know, if a franchise can't count on players to stick around, good players, reliable players, to man their positions for 5-10 years because they want out of the game as soon as possible, I don't see how that helps the sport either.
He's Dan Diamond from Forbes magazine, joining us, Dan Patrick's show. His column, Chris Borland's retirement should terrify the NFL. I could see 15 or 20 years down the road that there might be an accumulative effect or aftershocks with what has happened with the information here. But I do find it interesting. Chris Borland might get more attention of the parents who have kids who are going to play or thinking about playing because he's leaving at 24 as opposed to Junior Seau, who commits suicide after his career is over. That should scare you more than Chris Borland walking away, but that doesn't. That didn't, as much as Chris Borland's getting a whole lot of attention today. Junior Seau, we went, oh, man, what a shame. Killed himself. Dave Durison, oh, wow, shame. Killed himself. Andre Waters, what a shame. Killed himself. We're talking about Chris Borland, who's 24, healthy enough to walk away. That may have more of an impact. Is that fair? Is that what you're saying?
I think I'd agree with that, but I would also make the point that everything you just mentioned, it's cumulative, right?
Yeah.
Just like the cumulative effect of these stories hitting fans over and over and over again. I remember the Junior Seau story and how it was supposed to change everything, and it didn't. But it did lay the groundwork for more concern, more conversation, a few players here or there at different levels, at the college level, at the high school level, saying, maybe not for me. I bet if you talk to Chris Borland, I haven't had a chance to reach him, but I bet the Junior Seau story is hanging in his head. Certainly, you mentioned Dave Duerson and Easterling and so on. The 15, 20-year time horizon, I mean, that feels right for a couple other reasons, too. You look at the current generation of younger fans, guys who are used to playing Madden, who know the NFL in a somewhat different way. Who's to say that they won't be happy watching some video game version of the sport? As crazy as that might sound to you or me, I have no interest in watching a Madden video game Super Bowl. But 15 or 20 years from now, who knows what the sports landscape is going to look like? Who knows where esports might go, especially if we keep finding out information about the dangers of concussions and what that means for a pro football player.
Here's the difference with that, Dan, is you can be a rabid football fan, but you don't have to have played football. Other sports, chances are you played basketball, you played baseball. If you're a diehard hockey fan, you may have played on the ponds. Tennis fans, golf. It's different with football. You don't have to be a rabid fan to still want to turn that on. You may not want to play. You may not want your kids to play. It doesn't mean you won't turn on that TV.
Yeah, your point is spot on. I mean, I think about the game. I know so much about the dangers of football. I've been reporting on this beat for several years, and yet I still find myself watching if it's on in the background or if it's, we're at Thanksgiving. That's the tricky moral dilemma, I think, for fans. The more that we know, though, at some point, that is going to cross over into fans saying, you know what, this is not for me. And I am not the average fan, given how much I know about the dangers of football. But this was really the first year that I didn't follow the league that closely, other than when I was reporting on it. Every time I saw a serious hit, just wanted to turn off the TV and walk away. And the more fans that fall into that paradigm, the more people who hear about the Chris Borland story, to your point, Dan, I think that does start to settle in at some indescribable level. I have no survey data on how many parents today are more worried about football than yesterday, but that's your point. I think it's true. Awareness of these kinds of examples, of a guy like Borland opting out of a multi-million-dollar contract and leaving a career on the table, that is going to sit with enough folks to make them sit and think about, is this what I want my kid to do? And the next story that comes along, Chris Borland will just teed up the next person, the next 10 people. And while that doesn't affect this NFL in the near term, that steady creep is just wearing away the Teflon League in a way that I can't really remember the NFL ever being affected before.
Dan, thanks for joining us on short notice. We appreciate it.
Glad to be here. Thanks, Dan.
All right, Dan Diamond, Forbes Magazine.